Good morning. Welcome to the City of Sugar Land budget meeting for Thursday, August the 27th. First item on the agenda is public comment. Thomas, do we have anybody?
No, sir, we sure don't.
Okay. Move on then to item 2A, review of and discussion on proposed fiscal year 2021 annual budget and 5-year CIP program 2021 through 2025. Inclusive of all funds and forecasts. We've got Ms. Jennifer Brown, our Director of Finance, Rosita Bashoon, our Budget Manager, and Paula Kutchka, our Director of Human Resources. Welcome. Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, this morning, I'm going to let Rosita handle most of the workshop, or all of the workshop, unless y'all need me, and so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Perfect.
Thanks, Jennifer. Good morning, Mayor and City Council. This morning workshop will cover compensation and benefits, and Paula will be presenting this part of the presentation, and I'll be taking care of the other funds. As usual, the workshop format follows the same pattern as those presented before. Next, please. So we'll start off with compensation and benefits, and I'll hand it over to Paula.
Thank you, Rosita. Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Good morning, Paula.
So as we approach the annual budget process for compensation and benefits, go ahead and, thank you. Staff looks to the Council's compensation policy for guidance. The compensation policy includes in it these guiding principles, which guide us in our decision-making for recommendations to Council. They include recognizing the value of our employees, paying on a competitive basis, ensuring that we have fair and equitable systems, that we recognize performance through merit, that we can provide competitive benefits program, and that we utilize the benefits burden test to ensure that our compensation packages are within Council guidelines. So the next slide. The items that I will be covering with you this morning for FY21 include our salary structures, our pay for performance merit pool, the Texas Municipal Retirement System, our group health benefits, and then wrapping it up with a conversation about the benefits burden. So in this slide, you see, this is a familiar slide. It's been not only in our budget filings, but in conversations about the budget over the last few weeks. This chart illustrates that we are one of the leanest organizations among our peer cities, well below the average per capita employee, which is very impressive given the full service nature of our city, including an airport. Next slide. So this chart illustrates the 848 FTEs that the city has by service area. You can see from the layout that 42% of our employees make up our public safety population. This includes police and dispatch and fire EMS, with the remaining 58% as our non-public safety departments, which are broken up into two categories. We have our external service provider departments, such as economic development, public works, parks, E&S, planning and development services, our airport, our utility systems, and our internal services, departments like finance and HR and IT that make sure that our employees have the tools and resources they need to provide those services. Next slide. So talking about salary structures, for our non-public safety salary structures, this includes our non-exempt, our exempt, and our management elected official structures. We move these structures annually based on CPI. The CPI for February 2020 was 1.5%, so we will be adjusting the structures accordingly. Just as a reminder, this is not an across-the-board adjustment to salaries. We only ensure that employees remain within the boundaries of the new ranges once they are adjusted. Like I said, the only way employees receive adjustments are through our pay for performance. Our implementation date is planned for mid FY21 with the ultimate date to be determined based on the ongoing financial conditions of the city. Next slide. So this slide covers our public safety salary structures. Again, that's police and fire. Looking to the compensation policy, we see that our target is a 75th percentile. To get to that, we actually completed a public safety compensation study in FY20. So for FY21, we are planning on the phase 1 implementation. So we will be adjusting the police officer and firefighter range 5%, with the remainder of the ranges within those two structures adjusting the 1.5% as we work towards full implementation of the compensation study. And as with non-public safety, there is no across-the-board adjustments to salaries. We only ensure that employees remain within the new adjusted ranges. And the implementation will be mid FY21 based on the financial conditions of the city. Next slide. So the city, like I said, does have a strong history of recognizing pay for performance as not only our guiding compensation principle, but just part of our internal culture. So working with the finance department, the human resources is supporting the recommendation of the FY21 budget to include a proposed merit pool of 1.5%. This merit pool will allow staff to develop a conservative merit matrix to reward performance in compliance with compensation policy. Further preliminary feedback we've been receiving from other cities in the greater Houston area indicate that many are contemplating salary increases, some of them through cost of living adjustments, some through merit, some through a combination of both. And our 1.5% recommendation is more on the conservative side. We are seeing cities reporting anywhere between 2 and 4% for FY21. Next, we get to Texas Municipal Retirement System. So overall, TMRS's long-term planning is proving to strengthen the system and provide cities with the tools to fund their current and future obligations, and putting the system in a much healthier position than many other public pensions that are in the news today. So going into calendar year 21, because TMRS is on a calendar year basis, we are seeing the city's contribution rate of 14.57%. This is down slightly from our 2020 rate. And we are seeing our actuarial value funded ratio increase to 89.5%. And just as a reminder, the city of Sugar Land opted out of the Social Security system for all pension eligible employees in 1980. So other than TMRS, the only retirement savings that employees have access to on a pre-tax basis is contributions to their 457 deferred compensation program, and there is no city match for that.
Hey, Paula,
Yes, sir.
go back one slide.
To Mary, yes, sir.
Yeah, you made a comment, I think, that some cities were at 4%. Are those local?
We participated in a number of surveys. One of them was through the Texas City Managers Association, and they polled cities in the Houston area. And we also participated in some ad hoc informal surveys from cities in the Houston area. And yes, sir. Now, some of that may be a combination where they have automatic steps or cost of living adjustments because of the way their compensation systems are structured. And then they tag on a pay for performance component on top of that. But yes, sir, we are hearing several cities between 3 and 4%.
Well, I know we're not doing it, but I want to make the statement publicly, that doesn't fly, not in this environment. 4% is, I think, extraordinary when you look at CPI. I know we took the CPI in February. By the time we get to the end of the year, when you look at CPI, I'd be surprised if CPI was even positive. I think it'll be a negative number.
And a lot of cities are, yes, sir, that's a great point. And a lot of cities are still going through their processes like we are. Those were just the data that we were able to collect, so.
Yeah, no, I understand. I support what Mike's put out there as the 1.5% at mid-year. I just think, anybody that heard 4% probably fainted. We may have to give them some smelling salts. So I just wanted to make
Yes,
sure
sir.
that I don't buy into the 4%.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Carol?
Yes, and Paul, I was wondering, how many cities have furloughed employees in the area? Because I know you're talking about the raises, but have many cities furloughed employees during this?
We heard the cities were contemplating that at the beginning of the pandemic back in March. But when we had our last regional roundtable, which was about 2.5 weeks ago, we had a number of cities reporting that they're in a similar position to us. They are actively recruiting for public safety. They are filling key non-public safety vacancies as they come available. And they are trying to make sure that their staff is positioned to provide the services to their cities. So in the Houston area, we are not hearing a lot of conversation about furloughing or laying off employees that may have been in the media in March or April.
Mike?
Yeah, thank you. We just recently had our city manager roundtable, and I'll tell you, for the region, I don't recall any city in the region furloughing or laying off. What you've seen is a lot of the larger cities, a lot of cities that have pre-existing budget issues, that this just accelerated it. I would say that the vast majority of the cities in our region were giving COLAs and merits, so that is seems to be what the norm is for the region. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Go ahead, Paul.
Okay, if there are no other questions, we'll get back to the group benefit slide. So if you could advance, there we go. So this slide just illustrates the city's group benefits offerings. So the column on the left side of the screen are the city provided benefits, and on the right side of the screen are the optional benefits that employees can select based on their personal or family situation. Just as a reminder, staff continuously engages with the compensation committee. We have regular updates and conversations regarding benefits. So we're going to be talking about what our recommendations are for the FY21 budget year, as well as some key information about contracts coming back to council. So for group benefits, next slide, please. We are recommending that we remain self-funded for the medical claims as we move into year 5 of our 5-year contract with Cigna for our TPA services on the medical and pharmacy plan. In FY21, we have worked very closely with HR and finance has worked very closely with HUB, our benefits consultant, to ensure that the budget is being proposed covers the plan costs, including pharmacy and medical claims, as well as continue to build our reserve for claims. Our dental and vision plans, we have confirmed that we will have no premium changes for these plans as we enter the year 5 of the medical contract, and we can continue to offer those plans without any changes to them. Next slide. With regards to our group life and disability plans, we are entering year 3 of a 3-year rate guarantee with our current provider, Dearborn National, a Blue Cross Blue Shield company. So year 3 does ensure that there are no premium rate or design changes. So we'll continue to use those same premium calculations. And stop loss, we are working with our consultant through our stop loss contract for the 2021 plan year. However, that plan does require a little bit more data than what we have on the medical side. So we will be bringing that contract to council in November. However, we are anticipating that the cost for stop loss will come in at or below our budgeted expectation due to better than expected reimbursements year to date. So the next slide. Just as a reminder, the city has been self-funded for the medical plan since 2012. Our total per capita claims on the rolling 5-year average, so that's looking at the previous completed 5 plan years, is running about 7.1%, while the national average for the same period is approximately 7.2%. So what that's telling us is even though we have fluctuations from year to year, our plan long-term is performing as expected.
Hey, Paula.
Yes, sir.
A couple comments and then a question.
Yes, sir.
When I look at our firm, we're about 1,100 people. We're private. Cities, 830, 840. We're seeing the same thing that you see. We also have seen a decrease in the number of claims, and we believe the reason for that decrease in the number of claims is people maybe aren't going in to get checked. When you see a 15% decline, why do you think that is?
A lot of what's driving that decline, because we are still experiencing claims week after week. A lot of that decline is the management of our high claimants. Our high claimants are making up a smaller percentage of our overall claims costs.
Okay.
We are seeing that employees are actively using telemedicine options. They're using virtual visits. There are some in-person visits. They are getting their prescriptions filled. We are staying on top of it to ensure that they are getting their maintenance medication prescriptions filled. So we are seeing that employees and their families are using the plan. We do recognize that some are putting off elective surgeries.
Yeah, elective surgeries, right.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And there was a small window where there was a moratorium on those, where they weren't allowed to schedule them, but we are starting to see that as doctors are recommending that it's not really an elective, you really need to do this, and employees and members, family members are having that comfort level. They are moving forward with that. We are having lots of babies. It's a great thing. So we are using the plan. It's just some things are taking a back seat as we work our way through the pandemic.
Is this the last year of the plan year, Paula?
This is the last year of 21 will be the last year of our 5-year contract with
Okay.
Cigna. So next year we will be going out to do a very comprehensive RFP, not only for the medical, but the dental and vision plans and our life and disability products. It's just coincidental that those 2 major contracts are expiring in the same plan year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Paul.
Sure thing. So what this chart illustrates is the projected savings estimates of our plan by year being self-funded versus fully insured. So while these are not actual dollars in our pockets, because we were self-funded, these are projections based on had we gone out as a city and purchased fully insured products, what the city would have been guaranteed to spend versus what we were actually able to save year over year. And yes, you do see a negative in 2018. We had an unusually high number of high claimants, and that accounted for a significant amount of our overall plan spend. But as you can see, year over year, long term, being self-funded has made a very financially sound decision. It was a very financially sound decision by the city, and we're very proud of how the self-funded plan has been working for not only the city, but for our employees. So just to kind of cap off what you will be seeing over the next couple of months as we move forward to bring you the contracts for renewal. for FY21, we are seeing no increases needed to the funding of the benefits fund. That means that we will be able to keep our employee and city contributions the same going into 2021, as well as maintaining the same plan design of our existing plans. Additionally, we will be able to increase our reserve for claims to an estimated 20% of claims. So we're very proud to be able to not only maintain that reserve since 2012, but actually move towards the position of growing it. So that brings us to our last slide for comp and benefits, and that is the benefits burden. As we discussed in the beginning, the proposed budget and the compensation and benefits items that we've been discussing allow the city to maintain a benefits burden of 30.9%. Our compensation philosophy that provides us direction states that we need to ensure that the benefits burden is in line with the private sector for our size, which is approximately 34.8% according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So you can see from this slide that the benefits and compensation programs we are proposing are in line with the council's policy direction.
Stuart?
Paula, regarding the 75th percentile on our public safety folks, you said that we're going to need to increase by 5%, but we're not going to do across the board. Do we benchmark every single pay level? For instance, sergeants, police sergeants, we adjust them against all police sergeants, or are we just talking about the entry level count?
So for our normal maintenance, we focus on the 75th percentile of the entry level position. That is what is stated in the policy. However, when we do our comprehensive public safety compensation study, which we generally do one every 5 to 7 years, we do look at all ranges to make sure that our ranges are appropriately spread in distance, not only from one another, but that the width of the range allow for appropriate career growth. So that is what we did in FY20 with the assistance of a consultant, and that is what we will be proposing as implementation as phase 2 in a future year. But we are making sure that we are getting as close as possible to the 75th percentile in 21, given the financial constraints that we want to ensure are present in our decision making.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question.
Steve?
Yeah, this is just probably a question to Mike. If you've seen in the questions that council members have submitted, a question I submitted asking what the tax rate impact would be if we gave every employee what I call combat pay bonus of $500 per employee. We have done an outstanding job of keeping our city services up and running, despite the fact that there's this pandemic with employees in almost every department coming down with this, people stepping up, going outside their normal work to help with this, scavenging everywhere in every place to find PPE. I believe it's been an extraordinary effort on the part of our staff. And so I really think that would be an appropriate response on the part of City Council to our staff. But I'll defer to our city manager if he thinks that's potentially bad for our budget or is an ill-advised recommendation.
Mike?
Yeah, I need to pull that number. I know that it's been sent to me. I just don't recall what it is off the top of my head.
I think it's a third of a cent.
Yeah, a third of a cent.
Yeah. Mike, this is Jennifer. It's, at this point, since you've proposed a tax rate, we cannot exceed the tax rate that we have published, which is the 3365. The cost to implement that would be around $528,000. But we would have to find a source other than property tax revenue to fund that, since we've already proposed and published the tax rate for this year.
Yeah, and so I would just, if the council is interested in that, I think what would make the most sense is finish out this fiscal year, see where we're at, and see what we're looking like for next year, and then kind of revisit that with, from that standpoint, since there's not really the ability to add into the tax rate for it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that.
Well, then I apologize that I waited too long to bring this up. I thought bringing it up at our compensation and benefits would have been appropriate, but it's a miss on my part, and so I apologize.
Can I jump in on this?
Sure, Stuart, go ahead.
Yeah, as a member of the Finance and Audit Committee, this is a question that's near and dear to me. And since the way we're budgeting and on projects and whatnot is to hang on until the first half of the FY21 is complete to see how we're doing financially, I think that we would have a really good picture of whether we could do something like that. If I would be in favor of something like that, if we were able to fulfill on our commitments to our CIP and such, and do that as well out of the budget, because we are budgeting very conservatively. I would be in favor of that, but I think we want to wait till about mid-year.
Mike, go ahead.
And I would just say to Councilman Porter's point earlier, I don't know that it's too late, because I wouldn't adjust a tax rate or recommend that based on a one-time, non-recurring payment. We have really shut down spending this year. We're anticipating, and I think I said this in my update to you all the other day, that significant savings this year. Now, obviously, our bigger concern is next year, but we're going to be closing out the year here in 45 days or so. So I would anticipate there being funding in this fiscal year if the council wanted to do that out of one-time funding. So
I think,
So I'm back. And I would solicit my colleagues to weigh in on this, but thanks to Stuart for his support. And I really do think that our staff has done an above and beyond keeping our residents fully serviced and in this extraordinary time.
thoughts from the other council members?
Here, I'll speak here. I definitely support a one-time payment, obviously without a tax implication. But even if we have some one-time funding that comes in, we can take a look at that and allocate it, because a little bit more than $500,000 is something that we should be able to make up. And the way we've been funding and the way the tax rolls have been coming in, very favorable. We're hopeful July and August. The activity I'm seeing out there is that we should be in good shape for right now. Obviously, that can change very quickly, but I'm definitely in support of what Steve and Stuart have said.
Umesh?
Yeah, I think echoing what everyone's saying, but let's not forget, you can always do an interim budget amendment and make modifications at that time. So,
Carol?
I'd just like to wait and see till we have more financial information, to like a mid-year type thing, as Stuart suggested. Mid-year FY21.
Yeah, I share Mike's concern about what next year is going to look like. My recommendation would be to wait to mid-year, toward the end of the year, going into next year, mid-year of next year, before pull the trigger on anything. I would not do anything this year.
I have a comment, Mayor.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
So I guess every year we get together and do a compensation and benefits committee meeting with the employees. So if, maybe they want to weigh in on this decision on maybe they wanted a change in the compensation structure in a different way with regards to benefits. So if they would be able to meet, haven't been able to do that this year. If there was some other way for them to get compensated for their extraordinary efforts, maybe they would want to participate in a committee and talk about that.
Good point, Paula, Jennifer. Paula, did you get that?
Yes, sir, I sure did.
Okay. Anybody else?
I'm not 100% sure where we ended up on this. I believe the city manager said that if we come in at FY20 well ahead or enabled to do it without any tax impact, we could go ahead and do it then. Or I also heard that from Carol that she would rather wait till mid-year 2021, I believe, which would be March 31st next year to see how things go. But I don't know. And then Councilmember Lane suggested that we put together an employee confab and ask them. So where are we ended up on this?
Let's do this, Steve. Let's let Mike and Paula and Jennifer get together and do a little bit more analysis as to where we actually are right now, where we think we're going to end up the year. I'm happy to bring it back to council. If council feels they want to vote on it within the next couple months, I'm happy to bring it back to council. I'm not sure I can support it, but I'm happy to bring it back.
It's okay, Mayor. We haven't always agreed on everything. So thank you for your flexibility and willing to bring it back. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mike?
Yeah, we'll do that. And we're anticipating, I think our initial estimates are that we would see this amount in salary savings even for the year, because as you know, we've been holding position. So we'll look at several options, kind of bring them back and go from there.
Thank you, Mike. Jennifer or Rosita?
Sure. So next up is the internal service funds. This covers the employee benefits, fleet replacement, and the high-tech replacement funds. Next, please. For the employee benefits fund, FY20 projection, net income is 0.081 million, reserve for claims is 1.75 million, ending fund balance is 0.08 million. For FY21, revenues are budgeted at 14.22 million, expenditures at 14.28, and we have a negative net income of 0.05 million, and the reserve for claims is now being increased to 2.33 million from the 1.75. And as Paula said, we have no increase from city contributions, no employee contributions. And we have an available ending fund balance of 0.01 million. Next, please. This fund accounts for the replacement of all city vehicles. One of the strategies used for this fund was to reduce the transfer in from the general fund by 50% due to the effect of the virus on revenues in the general fund. In addition, an interfund loan to the general fund is also included to help with the reduced revenues in the general fund. The replacement list was reduced from 46 vehicles to 20 vehicles with an emphasis on public safety vehicles. Next.
Question.
Go ahead, Steve.
My recollection is we had sort of a policy about interfund loans where there was no problem doing it if it was seemed to be prudent and reasonable. But we asked that there would be information provided at the same time on what's the plan to pay it back. And maybe an annual accounting of where we are on that plan. So my question is, are we planning to pay this back? And in general, what's the plan to pay it back?
So I'll ask Jennifer to address that question, please.
Our goal would be not to utilize this interfund loan. It is right now there as a tool that we can utilize. If we determine that we need to move forward with that, we would bring it to council for approval via resolution, and we would have a payment plan, a repayment plan associated with it. So right now it's in there as an option. The way we've been performing, the way our sales tax has been coming in, we've been doing better than anticipated. And so my goal is that we will not need to utilize this tool.
So it's more or less a placeholder then, Jennifer, is what you've got.
Yes, sir. And so it's just, it is in there as a revenue. It is a one-time strategy. And so it's just something we'll have to take into consideration as we're evaluating our performance going into fiscal year 21.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, Jennifer. So for FY20, our ending fund balance is $3.23 million. And for FY21, revenues are $0.99 million. Our expenditures is $2.52 million, and this includes a transfer out to the general fund. Ending fund balance is $1.69 million. Next. This fund covers the replacement of high-tech equipment. Again, as part of the strategy to deal with the reduced revenues in the general fund, we've reduced the transfer to the general fund to this fund from the general fund by 50%. The replacement list was implemented based on technology needs. All public safety items were fully funded, and we had some reductions in the general government equipment purchase. Next. So for FY20, ending fund balance is $2.19 million. For FY21, revenues are budgeted at $0.73 million, expenditures at $1.75 million, and ending fund balance of $1.35 million for this fund. Next. Economic Development Program includes a 4A, 4B, and the Tourism Fund. Next. The Economic Development Program is funded by the SLDC, the SL4B, and the Tourism Fund. Both corporations are funded by a quarter-cent sales tax, and funding are restricted by the Economic Development Act. Next. So again, both corporations were affected by the virus with lower sales tax revenue. However, reduction in revenues were offset by reductions in reserve for opportunity. The corporation will now support economic development functions normally funded by the Tourism Fund, as their focus will now be on business recovery. Next. So for FY20, ending fund balance is $4.14 million and over policy of $3.23 million. For FY21, total revenues are $7.17 million. The revenue was updated from the file budget as the TILS assignment was increased by $125,000 due to the certified tax rule for the TILS number 1. Expenditures are $7.12 million. Net income is a negative $0.05 million. Ending fund balance is $4.23 million over policy of $3.41 million. Next.
What question, please?
Go ahead, sir.
Does debt service come out of these funds?
Yes, they do.
Okay, thanks.
Rosita, you might go over on the SLDC, the overall debt, look at principal interest total, and then what the requirement is for just this year.
Sure. I'll just quickly get to my notes. So out of the expenditures of the 7.12 million for FY21, the debt service payment is 4,053,000. And that covers 3 debt issues.
And please remind me, forgive me for not knowing this. Our big entertainment venues are built into the 4A and the debt service on those, like the Smart and the Constellation.
Jennifer, can you help me out on that, please? I don't have my notes right up.
Yes, the SLDC supports the Smart Financial Center. They issued a significant amount of debt to support that facility, and the 4B Corporation supports Constellation Field.
Okay, because my continuing concern, of course, is that we can't use those venues, and therefore the tenants have difficulty. But are you saying that we continue to be able to handle the debt service?
Yes, so these are sales tax revenue bonds backed by the corporation, so they are only dependent on sales tax performance. As we talked through in the debt service fund workshop back on August 13th, there is a taxable debt service fund that we have set up that is supported by the lease revenues from the facility from ACE. And we do have a letter of credit on file that covers 3 years worth of debt service, which actually with the amendment to the lease, we are increasing that. And so we're in really good shape to meet those obligations.
Where I was heading with that was the debt service for 2021, principal and interest is about $4 million. If you look at the revenue side, now our revenue is down because it's sales and use tax based, but the revenue side plus the fund balance, as Jennifer said, it's more than enough to cover it for several years. I suspect you have, I'm not looking at the 4B, but I suspect the 4B is the same way.
Yes, the 4B is in really good shape, and we'll talk about it in just a moment.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. So our total expenditures for the FY21 budget is 7.12 million, and just wanted to point out in the transfers to other funds, the corporation will be covering 50% of a 1.5 FTE that's normally funded by the tourism fund. Next. Here's a 5-year forecast. Revenues for FY21 is 7.17 million, and this grows to 8.79 million in FY25. Again, these revenues are increased compared to what we have filed because of the increase in the TERS assignment. And we'll see an increase here over the 5 years of 665,000 from the assignment. So we also have a note here on the slide where we talk, when we prepared these 3 scenarios for the 4A, we did not include the assignment from the reimbursement from TERS number 3, just to be conservative. However, so this is why we have this note on the slide here to say that. So a total of 4.8 million is included in the reserve for opportunity. Our expenditures also include the reserve for opportunity. The ending fund balance for FY21 is 4.23 million, and in FY25, 2.15 million. This fund meets its fund balance policy throughout the forecast. Next. 4B, FY20 ending projection for is 2.83 million and an over policy amount of 1.92 million. For FY21, total revenues are 5.89 million, expenditures 6.8 million. The ending fund balance is 2.42 million and an over policy amount of 1.6 million. Here's a total expenditures for FY21 is 6.86 million. Also included in the transfer out here is the corporation will be covering 50% of a 1.5 FTE, again, normally funded by the tourism fund. Next. 3 CIP projects are being funded by the corporation for a total of $650,000. Next. Revenues for FY21 is 5.9 million, and this grows to 7.11 million in FY25. Again, when we prepared the scenarios for the 3 scenarios for this fund, we did not include the reimbursement from Third Street, the 7.8 million. The total reserve for opportunity totals 13.8 million. The ending fund balance for FY21 is 2.43 million to 1.6 million in FY25. This fund meets its fund balance policy for the 5 years. Next up, the tourism fund. The tourism fund is used to promote tourism and the convention and hotel industry. Next. This is one fund where the city saw an immediate impact on due to the virus. Occupancy started to decline since March, and revenues realized showed a 20% decline for the third quarter. Staff is anticipating a 90% decline for the fourth quarter and expects this impact to continue into FY21. Next. Here you can see the percent change from January through July and the impact of the pandemic. And the chart to the right also depicts that information from the table. So mid-March, the staff took immediate actions to reduce expenditures due to the expected lower hotel taxes. A total of 0.734 million were identified. These are the corrective actions that the staff have taken for FY21. Next. Here the revenue assumption used for FY21. We anticipate an average increase of 3.5% in the hotel occupancy for FY21. However, the overall revenue impact is less due to the opening of a new hotel in FY21. For FY20, the projection, the ending fund balance is 1.1 million and over policy of 0.95 million. For FY21, revenues total 1.62 million, expenditures at 1.99. Net income is a negative 0.37 million and an over policy of 0.57 million. Next.
Rosita, that's the hotel and occupancy tax?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we're still seeing, on average, Jennifer, you may have to help answer this. We're still seeing on average, what, 33% occupancy? I know the hotels are full right now across the lake from me, but that's due to Laura. I suspect everybody's going to bail out of there within the next couple days.
Yes, we have been seeing lower occupancy, but we projected for this fourth quarter or this period ending for the payments that we're getting in August and September, a 95% reduction in revenue. And so we, based on what we've received to date, we believe we will exceed that amount for this quarter. Just knowing that we still have 2 hotels outstanding from the third quarter, that even just the one payment from that would push us over our projections for this year. And so we projected the lower, the 50% compared to fiscal year 19 for fiscal year 21. And we have flexibility to be able to make adjustments if, in this fund in particular, if it does turn into a longer drawn out scenario, and we have options to be able to manage that with expenditures.
Jennifer, and it may be Jennifer may have to help with this. From an economic development, are we getting any feedback from EcoDev? Do they have I think they've got a pulse on hotels. Is it picking up, staying flat? I mean, what's it doing? What's the trend?
I mean, I think, and Teresa's on the call and can jump in as well, but I think generally it's a lot, like Jennifer Brown just said, it is better than we thought it would be right now, but it's still, I'm not going to lie, it's still a challenge. And so I'm going to let Teresa actually detail more because she's been visiting with them individually.
Yes, this is going to be one of the most impacted and affected industries due to the pandemic. And our hotels right now are optimistic, but they also see, that 35% average, which is what we're seeing in occupancy, kind of transition all the way into the end of the calendar year. But they are seeing some pickups closer towards the beginning of calendar year 2021, which would be our second quarter in FY21. They're starting to see some more individuals or groups, smaller groups, being able to book out for the kind of like the spring era, which is when you kind of take into account what they're seeing in their books and what they're hearing directly from their customers. We're using that information to project and anticipate what we're going to do with this fund as well.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Teresa. Keep a pulse on it.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. So here are the expenditures for FY21, which totals 1.99 million. Transfers out is for the debt service payment. So we have prepared 3 scenarios for this fund, and like Jennifer said, if we get into a situation like maybe an L scenario, we do have a plan in place to address it. Next. So this slide shows a corrective strategy that will be used for a longer term impact with, from an analytical approach. And we look at the timing of the personnel cost, back into the tourism fund, critical management of program expenses, and the potential of 4B to support the debt service payment. Staff will continue to monitor this fund as quarterly revenues are received, and also to continue communicating with all the Sugar Land hotels on the outlook. Next. Here's a 5-year forecast. The ending fund balance is 0.73 million in FY21 to 0.47 million in FY25. And this fund is over its policy for the 5-year forecast. Special revenue funds. Next. The special events fund. This fund is accounts for the rental fees collected from the Crown Festival site and the Brazos River Park. For FY20, the fund ends with a balance of 113,225. For FY21, total revenues are 108,843. Total expenditures 221,443, and this includes 130,000 to support the 4th of July event. Our net income is negative 112,600 and an ending fund balance of $625. This fund supports the court security for FY20. The ending fund balance is $14,869. For FY21, revenues are $43,525. The only expenditure in this fund is 40% of the court bailiff's personnel costs. This fund ends with a fund balance of $17,758. Next. This fund supports court technology needs. FY20 fund balance is $5,880. For FY21, revenues are budgeted at $35,920. Expenditures total $34,138. Also, we have moved 30,000, shifted 30,000 one time to the general fund to cover a portion of the maintenance costs for the court software from this fund.
Rosita, is the change in that software, but didn't we move to a different kind of court, so we ended up having greater expenses? Is that probably one time and then going forward, is that true?
I can answer that, Mayor. Kendra's not available this morning, but this fund has been supporting the maintenance of the Enclave software, which we've had for many years for court. But with the decline in the revenues that we've seen, just due to the lower activity, fewer citations being issued, court dates being postponed, there's not a lot of cushion in this fund. And so we did not hit the revenue projections for this year. And so we're just needing to shift that cost over to the general fund for a one-time. And we believe that once we get back into a more normal year, that we'll be able to take that back on.
Okay,
So this
thanks, Jennifer.
For those systems.
Thanks, Jennifer. So the city have 3 law enforcement funds. So for FY20 revenues in all 3 funds, it's interest income, except for we received $3,100 in federal seizures for FY21. 20. All 3 funds shows fund balances at the end of FY20. For FY21, revenues are all interest income, and there are no budgeted expenditures for all 3 funds. Next. Debt reduction funds. The city currently have 2 debt reduction funds, and these are operated based on the Strategic Partnership Agreement, also known as the SPA. Revenues for these funds is a 20% out of city service fee, and the use of these funds are defined by the SPA. Next. So for both FY20 and 21, there are no expenditure budgets. Revenues are basically 20% out of city fee from surface water, and this fund balance continues to grow for both funds. Enclave at River Park, this fund basically covers the infrastructure debt service. Next. So for FY20, the ending fund balance is $71,550. And for FY21, the ending fund balance is $67,329. Next. So this is one of 2 new funds being proposed for FY21 called the PEG Fund. Its purpose is to improve accountability of restricted revenues, and the revenue was established through the Comcast franchise agreement. And for FY21, we estimate a revenue of $170,000, and this is basically based on 6% of cable franchise fees with an expected revenue of $1.02 million. Funding are restricted to programming equipment. And if at the end of FY20 there's any remaining fund balance that for these funds, we will transfer it over to this new fund. Next, this is a second new fund being proposed for FY21, an animal shelter donation. These activities are currently being recorded in the general fund, but having this new fund will help us better keep track of the revenues and expenditures. For FY21, both revenue and expenditures are budgeted at $50,000. And the use of the funds is to enhance the operations of the animal shelter. And again, if we do have any remaining balances in the general fund at the end of FY20, we will move this fund, those funds, this new fund.
Would that fund also be used for the CIP portion of the new animal shelter, or is that strictly for operations?
This is strictly for operations.
Okay.
The CIP will be in another fund.
Okay.
Thanks. So we do have a follow-up on the solid waste household hazardous waste option, and Stacy is here to give us an update.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Since our meeting last week, we had additional discussions with Republic Services regarding the household hazardous waste program. And while those discussions are ongoing, they seem agreeable to utilizing November and December as a transition period, during which time they would administer the on-call household hazardous waste service, and then residents utilizing the service would pay for that collection directly. That service would continue through 2021, during which time its success could be evaluated. And staff would also continue to advertise disposal options in our area. And Republic would assist the city with 2 collection events in 2021.
Question, Carol?
Stacy, could you sort of repeat that then? So you're saying that residents would have to pay for hazardous waste collection on an individual basis in November and December?
Well, so it's beginning in November and December and then running through 2021. The Household Hazardous Waste Program would be operated as an on-call basis like it is now, but instead of it being included in the solid waste rate, it would be the residents paying for that service as they use it. They would pay directly to Republic for that disposal.
Okay.
But
what would that cost be per call to a resident?
We've reviewed data since 2018 to about April of 2020. The average cost is about $166 per collection, but it's going to vary depending on what individuals are trying to dispose of. But what we've also tried to incorporate here as an option would be those collection events, a couple collection events during the year as well that would give an opportunity for residents, and then also continuing education efforts such as the Fort Bend County Recycle Center. We also have places like retail stores such as Best Buy that can recycle electronics and things like that. So we would heavily focus on educational efforts of available disposal options in our area.
So if a resident calls up in November, December, then they would say, I need to have the such and such picked up. So they would be given a cost estimate in advance then when they call.
They would work through that directly with Republic. And again, it would begin in November, but it would actually be operated throughout all of next calendar year as well in that manner. But yes, they would work through that with Republic.
Okay, so you said Best Buy has, what does Best Buy accept for hazardous waste?
So they accept electronics.
Electronics, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Does that include batteries or just?
That's some of the research that we're going to have to do on exactly which items they accept and how we could share that with everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Stacy. Steve, go ahead.
Stacy, just to make sure I understood, in 2021, we're going to have 2 collection events citywide, and those will be at a cost to the residents or included in the solid waste rate?
No, so what we're like I said, discussions are ongoing with Republic, but what we're looking at with them is having them assisting with 2 events. So that the resident themselves would not be paying.
Okay.
But
Sort of like a drug take back once a year that.
Very similar, yes, but that's what we're working towards right now.
Thank you very much. I think that does serve the. Am I the only one on the echo? Okay.
Thanks. No, I think that works, Steve. Anyone else? Okay, thanks, Stacy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stacy. So here are the key dates for September 1st, the 8th, and the 15th. So are there any questions before we end the presentation?
Questions from council? Steve?
You may remember this conversation, Mayor, but once upon a time we had a lively discussion about the neighborhoods in our city that were gated and that their responsibilities behind the gate for their associations was to accumulate money so they could maintain their own streets so that when we went in for fire or police protection, we would not be damaging our vehicles. And to that end, My concern was that if they lost focus on this requirement, that requirement could come back on the city of Sugar Land, and it would be a big one. And so we discussed some sort of monitoring, that how they were doing and were they doing it, and were we reminding them of that. And although it's not strictly a thing we budget, we don't want to budget it. We want to make sure that we don't have to budget it, but we want to make sure somebody else is budgeting. And so I know that was a difficult thing to conceptualize, and I just haven't heard anything about how that's going. And it may be the subject for another workshop in the future, but I am concerned that we keep that focus on those communities so that they are accumulating the necessary funds to maintain their roads.
Jennifer, Mike, anybody want to take that one? I remember the conversation, Steve.
Yeah, I'm going to punt this to Jennifer since I don't know that I was here when that conversation occurred.
I don't know which Jennifer you're punting to, but we'll need to get you an update on that.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair, Steve. I remember the conversation. I can tell you the HOA that I'm a part of, we have, it's part of our assessment, but I don't know what it is for everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, the roads last 40 years, depending on who built them and how. But there's going to be maintenance, and I just think it's prudent for us to make sure that they're fulfilling their obligations.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Thank you, and I look forward to hearing about that in the future.
Jennifer Brown, is that it?
That is it, sir.
Man, look at y'all. Y'all got done early.
Ready to get these done. So the next steps, Tuesday, we will have our public hearing on the budget, as Rosita showed in the last slide. We'll have the first reading of the fee ordinance and the first reading of the PID assessment. September 8th, we will have a public hearing on the tax rate. And then on the 15th, we'll be back to approve the budget, the tax rate, second reading of the other ordinances, and vote to ratify the tax revenue. We still have to have that extra vote. That did not go away thanks to Senate Bill 2. So we still have a lot of actions to do, but unless you all have any other questions, the only thing I have left outstanding from this discussion would, and we will follow up with Public Works and Engineering, would be maintenance of the roadways in the gated communities. And so we will follow up with you on that at a later time.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion to adjourn.
Got a motion to adjourn at 8:40. Thank you all.
Thank you.